Hello and welcome to Talk Motivation with your host Elvis Eckardt, former pro athlete turned business owner, motivating you to achieve personal growth, form new habits, and find happiness in your career and life. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode.
Hello everybody, Elvis Eckardt here, your host of Talk Motivation. So glad you joined us. This week's topic on the podcast, living up to your true potential, which means stepping outside your comfort zone and expanding your boundaries. It's a follow-up really on a post I've recently published on LinkedIn, which turned some heads and got loads of engagement. Have you ever wondered why you're not achieving what you may have sought out to achieve? You had a thought, and it sounded really good, and maybe you did what you had to do for the first few days, but then you went back to your old ways. Does that sound familiar? Are you going to be the person who never reaches its full potential, or the person who takes a little extra effort to believe and love yourself enough to make the necessary changes you need to make in order to reach your goals and work on becoming a better version of yourself? The choice is yours, just like it was mine. We are no different. Really happy you found your way back, and let's jump right into it. I'm really excited. Average people do average things, get average results, and live average lives. Extraordinary people, on the other hand, do extraordinary things, get extraordinary results, and live extraordinary lives. Your potential is everything you can become, you will achieve, and everything that lies within your future influence that will live on after you're gone. Your potential is also everything you're capable of, but hasn't been accomplished yet. Please do yourself a favor and don't ignore your own potential. Listen to me, I've done it for way too long, and once I understood that we have to live up to it, my life truly transformed. If you do ignore it, however, it will have negative consequences for your whole life. Maintaining the status quo feels for most people satisfying enough, but in the long run it will lead to negative emotions. You start to lose touch with your gut feeling because after time, you dismiss it as irrational. You'll attract toxic people into your life. You live to please others, but not yourself. You lose confidence because you're always looking for confirmations from others. You constantly blame others but yourself for things that happen to you. You'll be eaten from the inside by doubt and regret. Now, what is holding you back to live to your own potential? There's a saying that goes, if you do what is easy, you'll live a hard life. But if you do what is hard, you'll live an easy life. What that means is that it is easy to do the bad things and hard to do the good things, emotionally speaking. It is more emotionally difficult to go to the gym than to stay inside and watch TV. It is more emotionally difficult to tell the truth after making a mistake than to lie. It is more emotionally difficult to study for a test the night before you have to take it than to play that new video game you just got yourself. And so, because the right things are more difficult, lots of people fail to do it and do the easy thing instead, which ends up causing a lot of problems and frustration. So what I'm trying to say is the difficulty of doing the right thing versus the easiness of doing the wrong thing is what limits a lot of people's potential. Do you sometimes feel that the older you get, the more your dreams fade away? If so, don't worry, you're not the only person who gets thoughts like that. I get them too. The enthusiasm, energy and excitement you have when you are younger gradually dies down with the time. It's just normal. For some of your goals and aspirations, you might have set the benchmark incredibly high when you were younger and then just failed to get where you thought you'd be. Maybe you talked yourself out even of trying. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever accomplished something that didn't live up to your expectations and reaching that specific goal wasn't the be-all, end-all you anticipated? Before you get to that point though, ask yourself right now, am I living up to my potential? I have 6 questions which can help you reach an answer to that question. The first question you should ask yourself is, when was the last time I took a risk? When I use the word risk, I don't mean something reckless like going on a roller coaster or gambling away your savings on a roulette table. Those are simply what I refer to as blind risks, or risks done without planning or any analysis. They are risks that simply provide a temporary adrenaline rush but give you no long-term rewards whatsoever. On the other hand, there are calculated risks. Risks that are carefully evaluated on both their upside and downside levels before you perform them. These risks, like any other type of risks really, have potential loss involved, but they also have potentially great rewards in the long run. These are the risks we are going for. For instance, you've always dreamed of going to that faraway land with amazing landscapes and this unique cultural experience. However, as you picture what might happen, fear and anxiety just begin to form in your brain. It's just how it is. You shift out money for something you end up hating. You get stranded in a country where you don't know anybody. You feel extremely uncomfortable and want to return home. But also, picture the good things that can happen. You get the experience of a lifetime. You meet awesome people and form connections. You learn new things about yourself and the places you visit. You learn a new language. You sit on that beach, sipping that pina colada, the sun's shining. Awesome, isn't it? Understandably, a big decision like this requires time and thought. At the same time, it's tempting to keep putting things off into perpetuity, even if we genuinely want to do something that doesn't have any sense of urgency, which applies to the most important things. After a while, those daydreams, they go stale. So you need to consider what you would regret more, looking back and having tried something out of your comfort zone, or never trying at all. The second question you should ask yourself is my favorite actually, and it's, am I intentional in my actions? Are you performing actions in a deliberate manner? Not a task your boss asks you to complete, not a chore someone expects from you, but something that you actually want to do. That something means doing whatever you're passionate about. It includes making plans to travel to a place you've always wanted to visit, practicing your hobby, or working on a personal project. It doesn't include browsing the web, watching videos on YouTube, or simply reading about someone else's experience on a blog. At the end of the day, you'll look back on the things you wanted to do, not what someone else expected of you, if that makes sense. If something is truly important to you, you need to make time for it. It's as simple as that. It might mean waking up earlier before work, setting aside time when you get home, or carving out a section of your weekend. Being intentional in your actions means making purpose-based decisions. If you don't make decisions for yourself, someone else will make them for you. Please make things happen yourself.
You are listening to Talk Motivation, the podcast where you get your weekly dose of motivation. Now back to your host, Elvis Eckardt.
The third question you should ask yourself is, if I were to fast forward my life to a few decades from now, would I be proud of myself? Look at what you're doing today, or at least where your actions are leading you. Now, project that direction to 20 or 30 years from now. Would you be pleased with the results? When you look back on what you did over the past week, think about how much of that time was spent doing something that was important versus something urgent. It's easy to get swept up in the everyday necessities, grocery shopping, sorting through your emails, or catching up on administrative work. These tasks are fine. But are you so caught up in your tasks that you keep pushing aside things that are actually important to you? Maybe you'll always say that you'll work for yourself one day, but that idea doesn't come to fruition because yet another pile of work just landed on your desk again, or you found the sheer enormity of carrying out that goal too stressful. If you're feeling overwhelmed by it all, you can break up that one important thing into pieces. What's the one piece you'll work on today? For instance, you can start by reaching out to someone with the guidance you need, or setting aside half an hour on your calendar to brainstorm. When you set aside time every day, you get closer to achieving the things you're proud about. The fourth question you should ask yourself is, do I feel strangled or free? When you rest your head on your pillow at night, how do you feel? When you wake up in the morning, what sorts of thoughts go through your head? That sleeping period is a critical time for your body to rest, but it's also a period for your mind to reflect on what's happening in your life. The way you feel during those night hours is an indicator on whether or not you're satisfied with how things are going for you in your life at the moment. The quality of your sleep is also an indicator if you're making good progress on your goals. You sleep deeply during the night and feel light during the day. If you're stuck in a bad or less than ideal situation, it feels like a rain cloud is perpetually hovering over you. You feel restless when you should be asleep and fatigued when you should be wide awake. But remember, no matter how dead-ended your situation may seem, there's always a way out. Don't ignore those inner sentiments nagging away at you. They act like a gauge for whether you're satisfied with the direction your life is headed. The fifth question you should ask yourself is, what is my actual potential? The word potential itself is an interesting one. It denotes promise and ability, as if someone can reach great heights if he or she were to apply the maximum amount of effort and determination. We use phrases such as the sky's the limit or you can do anything you set your mind to. Yet all people have constraints. It isn't feasible for most to become professional athletes. Or maybe you want to enter a certain profession but you either don't have the grades or the opportunity. Age could be a barrier. In such cases, it's useful to use adaptive preferences, which are preferences developed in response to the feasible options available in front of you. One way to do this is not only consider the benefits of attaining something, but also its drawbacks. Let's say you didn't get the job you really wanted. You can think of the negatives associated with the position: poor fit, long hours, limited flexibility, and so on, and so on, and so on. Another way to use adaptive preference is to change how you incorporate that preference into your life. Maybe your childhood dream was to be a professional musician, but it never panned out. Someone I know performs in a band for local organizations on weekends and then sells music CDs to audiences afterward. It can be perfectly fine to keep a passion as a hobby. While we suffer from constraints such as time, ability, and luck, we have a lot of power in how we choose to work within those limitations. The last question you should ask yourself is, how do I look? Are you in shape? Do you care about your appearance? These questions might seem odd at first within the context of living up to your potential, but they're really not. After all, your appearance is not simply about how you look on the outside. The way you present yourself to the world is a reflection of how you feel on the inside. Being out of shape or fatigued looking reflects your inner state of mind. Someone who doesn't take care of themselves generally doesn't take care about their well-being. The way you look is also about your body posture. From glancing at someone, you can tell what type of day they're having. You can perhaps even tell what type of life they're having. A confident person who feels good about things will be more open, shoulders back, back straight, and solid eye contact. Someone who isn't doing great, on the other hand, will be more closed, shoulders forward, back hunched, and eyes cast downward. Body posture can change depending on our environment and mood, but we usually revert to certain mannerisms on a default basis. The good news is that even if you're not feeling so confident, simply assuming confident body postures, such as hands on hips or hands up in the air, can boost your mood and improve your performance before entering high-pressure situations, such as going into interviews or public performances. Try it. Try it even when you're not feeling under any pressure at all. If you ask yourself these questions and answer them honestly, you should be able to answer the initial question, am I living up to my potential, much easier. As we progress in life, our dreams and goals evolve as well. We might realize that a goal or even an aspiration we had wasn't so realistic, or we questioned the things we previously wanted. Changing your goals and aspirations are a normal part of getting older, but there's a difference between growing up and giving up altogether. Sure, we all have our limits, but it doesn't mean we should retain the status quo. What it also doesn't mean is that you should stay still in one place simply because it's the safest course. What are your limits? What's the highest you can reach? These are questions that only you can figure out yourself. When you start living up to your potential, you might be surprised at the answers. Thanks for listening to Talk Motivation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please share the love and let your network know about it. Don't want to miss any episode in the future? Go to iTunes, search for Talk Motivation, and hit that subscribe button. Feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can take the conversation there.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talk Motivation with your host, Elvis Eckardt. To listen to this episode again and to find previous episodes, search Talk Motivation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Sayonara, muchachos!